Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and a very good morning. Welcome to our 21st session of webinar series Captain of Industry brought to you by Faculty of Engineering UTM Johor Bahru. We are initiating university industry collaboration during Recovery Movement Control Order RMCO to have a platform with our Captain of Industry to share their thoughts, way forward and challenges during post-COVID-19. Now we are streaming live from Facebook Faculty of Engineering UTM. Today we would like to welcome Mr. Philip Kanianthara, Vice President of Operations Flex, with his interesting topic today entitled Create the Extraordinary. Without further ado, I would like to invite Yang Berusaha Professor Dato' Engineer Dr. Muhammad Rafiq Dato' Abdul Kadir, Dean Faculty of Engineering, to introduce our captain today. Over to you, Dato'.
Thank you, Murni. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, welcome everyone to our 24th UTM Engineering Captain of Industry webinar series. My name is Muhammad Rafiq and I am the Dean of Engineering University Technology Malaysia. Today, it is my utmost pleasure to welcome Mr. Jacob Kanianthara, Vice President of Operations, Flex. A bit about our presenter today. Jacob Kanianthara is Flex Vice President of Operations for Southeast Asia, based in Singapore. Jacob has been with Flex over the last 15 years and is responsible for the company's operations in Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Prior to joining Flex, Jacob worked as a software consultant and instructor for 6 years in Singapore and in the US. At Flex, Jacob began his career as a program manager and moved on to various global and regional program management roles for 13 years in Penang before assuming his current role. He is a computer science graduate from the National University of Singapore and earned an MBA from INSEAD, Singapore. His interests are in innovations in technology, manufacturing, and digitalization. Outside of work, Jacob enjoys leisure walks amidst nature to unwind after hours. He is conversant in English, Mandarin, and Malayalam. Okay, that's a brief biography of our distinguished guest speaker today. Here now is Mr. Jacob Kanianthara, Vice President of Operations Flex, on creating the extraordinary. Jacob, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Professor Dato' Dr. Muhammad Rafiq and Puan Murni, and also the Faculty of Engineering in UTM. This is a very exciting times for us, difficult times for many, but also exciting at the same time. And it is very heartening, and we at Flex actually feel very privileged to have had the opportunity to be invited to this webinar hosted by UTM. You know, this is a period of time where connecting people is becoming more and more difficult with all the social distancing measures, and humans by nature are very, very social people. So having these kind of forums to allow for continued collaboration between academia and industry is very, very commendable. And I just want to thank, on behalf of Flex, thank the UTM Faculty of Engineering for actually initiating these types of forums to engage and collaborate. All right. Now with that, I wanted to move on to talk about a little bit about what we're going to present today. As I mentioned, these are very difficult times for many, many people. And it is something where we have had in Flex ourselves. We have had a very difficult period to go through. And out of this, what we saw is basically out of the ordinary, we were actually able to find avenues through which to break through all the different obstacles and create the extraordinary. And so this kind of fits in a little bit with the company's tagline as well, which happens to be create the extraordinary. And what I would do here today is share with you some learnings that we had, some experiences that we had in these last, I would say, 4 or 5 months of going through COVID-19, and how we saw the markets evolve, and how we ourselves as an organization and as a community evolved to basically work together with our customers, with our employees, and also with our communities in which we live in, to try to see how we overcome these obstacles, you know, in a collective manner together. All right, and that's essentially the session that I'm going to have today. It's just a couple of slides that I'm going to share, because predominantly, I tend to like to have a more interactive session or dialogue. So I'll leave some time for questions, right, at the end. Okay, so let me move on here. Now, some of the things that we have been observing over the past few years, and especially I would say in the last 2 years especially, is this. We are seeing 5 common themes that are coming up that are driving the markets, right? The first one is with regards to connectivity. You see in the news very often the increase in terms of 5G connectivity technologies and cloud technologies. And what these technologies basically offer is the opportunity to provide higher volumes of data going through higher speeds and in a more reliable fashion. And with that, what it affords the ability to approach things differently. You now have the opportunity potentially of remotely undertaking various activities which were not possible in the past. As an example, we could talk about doing remote surgeries, telemedicine, all right, or doing remote autonomous operations of drones on land, in the air, and even on sea, right? We have seen various examples of unmanned vehicles that are all enabled because of the fact that we now have data pipes which are large, which are fast, and are able to send data reliably. And on the back end of that is we have cloud technologies that are able to take this increase in volume of data and scale up and handle it, right? So connectivity is a big theme that we see that is going to be growing exponentially, and all the more so on the back of what's happening with COVID-19, where people are staying remotely and having to work remotely. The second theme that we see is around the progression of the industry. All right, the industry went through a few cycles, and now we're on this phase that everyone collectively calls the Industry 4.0 era. And in that, the kind of technologies that basically we are looking at are things like augmented reality, virtual reality, higher levels of automation, robotics, and more autonomously run equipments, right? And with that, we see that progression will lead to higher levels of automation, will lead to higher levels of productivity. There will also, as a consequence, be losses in jobs as a result of that. But coming on the back of the losses of those jobs will also be opportunities for jobs to be upskilled and people to be earning more through the higher productivities that are achieved. So as with every evolutionary phase that we have gone in industrialization in history, what basically is going to happen is there's going to be a need to retool ourselves and look forward to re-equipping ourselves for the new technologies that exist in the new industrial age, right? The third theme that we see, and this is also again becoming more apparent with COVID-19, is this. One of the side effects of having the entire world literally almost shut down was it opened the eyes to everyone to see what it does to the environment. For the first time in many, many years, I'm not sure if some of you are aware, there was a news article that basically said the ozone layer effectively closed up on the North Pole, just given the tremendous reduction in CO2 emissions that happened as a result of this COVID-19, right? Now, with that, what it means is basically this. There is an avenue and an opportunity for all of us to engage between ourselves, whether being as consumers, being as business enterprises, being as just citizens of the world. There is an opportunity for us to engage each other responsibly and fairly and equitably, all right? And with that, we are seeing more impetus coming from our customers, asking us to demonstrate how we can be more responsible in the way we engage on the environmental front, in terms of diversity of our workforce, inclusion of our workforce, and also in the engagement of our society, all right, of the places that we live and work in. The fourth theme that we see is there is an exponential growth in terms of the development of sensor technology, right? And with this, what happens is that two things are basically coming together. There is now an ability for devices that we have, that we carry in our pockets, smartphones as an example, the processing power and the computing power today that is available in the palm of our hands. If you were to go maybe 30, 40, 50 years back, the equivalent of the computing power that exists today in the palms of our hands used to fill up an entire room. Now we are able to basically miniaturize it and bring it all the way down to the palms of our hands, right? And with that miniaturization and with that intelligence built into these devices, the sensor technologies that basically exist today, they are able to sense our location, they are able to, accelerometers as an example, are able to sense the rate at which we make movements, right? And with all of this, it provides an opportunity to remotely collect data and utilize that data in effective ways which were not seen in the past. All right, so it opens up a whole new range of intelligence that we can bring to how we approach problems that we have today. And last but not least is also the dynamic shift in the demographics, right? What we see here also is a massive shift in terms of the population centers of the world. Now today, if we were to look at the population shifts that are happening in the world, we have a big market that is coming up in Asia, both in the combination of China, India, Southeast Asia. These three together constitute, in terms of population, almost 40% of the world population, right? And also together with that, there are, 2 to 3 different demographic dividends that basically come out of that. One is obviously what we call a demographic dividend, whereby these parts of the world, and including Africa to some degree, have younger populations as an overall percentage, have a larger proportion of the younger age in their population, all right, that constitutes what we call a demographic dividend. Then the second piece of it is that there is something called an urbanization dividend. A good portion of this population as well is also moving more towards the urbanized centers, which then allow for a lot more demand on goods and services. And with that comes the challenge of being able to provide that last mile connectivity. So as the population numbers are increasing, as the population centers are moving more towards the cities and away from the rural villages, these provide both challenges as well as opportunities in how we are able to connect and bring goods and services to the doorsteps. And again here, this was a theme that was going on for the past few years, but accelerated on the back of COVID-19, whereby when people could not get out, all these goods and services, it became more important to be able to bring these goods and services to the people. And to some degree, I would say that, when we talk about frontliners today, right, we talk about a lot of the medical staff, the staff at the airports, at the ports. But one group of people that we tend to forget, who are actually very key frontliners, were actually the people who were, in the Grab services, who were bringing food or delivery of essentials to the people who were stuck at home, or even providing transportation services to people who could not move around. These people actually went out of the way during this period to make it happen. So the shifts that we are seeing in all of these 5 different areas basically causing us to sit and pause and think of how we're going to go about approaching things. So in that regard, just for the benefit of those who are not familiar with Flex, I'll just briefly explain what we do at Flex. So Flex started off 50 years ago, essentially, right? This year is our 51st year. Started off by doing manufacturing services, predominantly in the area of build that you see on the screen here, right? So we used to do contract manufacturing. Other companies would basically provide their designs to us, and we would provide the labor and the machinery that would be used to build these products. Then progressively over time, we observe that customers also were coming to us to ask us to help them to buy the materials, especially those materials which are common to many different customers, simple items like resistors, capacitors. These common items, we were able to aggregate the buys across multiple customers. And so we started to move further upstream and went into the deliver portion that you see on the right of build, which then allowed us to get into supply chains and actively work with suppliers to basically improve the supply chains. And then we went further down from there and started getting into what we call reverse logistics, whereby customers then started asking us, look, when there are failures in the field or at the customer ends, can you provide us with repair services or refurbishment services or just spare parts services to be able to provide a service level to the end customers? And so we went down those three stages over the course of the past few years. Now things have progressed more, and in each of these three stages that we went through, we went into it only where we felt there was an opportunity to establish scale, because all that we do in Flex is about operating at scale. If you look at our publicly published reports, we are not a company that makes fantastically high margins, right? We are single-digit margins, if anything. So how we make money and how we become profitable is with what we call asset velocity, the ability to execute operations in large scale and at high speed, so that in the process we basically be as efficient as possible for our customers and provide the service that way. And as things went along, we have now had more customers that are coming up to us and going upstream and asking us to provide services in terms of design and innovation. And I'm very happy and proud to say that we have actually been able to help some important startups to actually do some tremendous things. As an example, one of the startups we are working with is a company that basically provides autonomous delivery of foods through drones. All right, so we are working on some of these cutting-edge technologies, collaborating with them, finding a way how to take the designs that they have and industrializing it such that we could manufacture it in a manner which is repeatable at the quality levels, at the price levels that the customer would like, so that they could then go ahead to provide a service to their end customers, right? So these are some of the things that we are looking at doing, and we are looking at finding a ways to bridge this gap between the new age industries and customers that we have, and combining it with the existing customers that we have, which are probably much larger, more stable, and finding a way to bridge this gap to bring more interesting products to the market, right? That's essentially what we do. If I were to break down the markets or industries that we serve, we basically focus on six main categories. On the top left here, you see the communications and enterprise cloud environment. This is basically today what we collectively call the backbone of the internet. And again, here, I think I'm very proud to say that Flex, a lot of the equipment that forms the backbone of the internet and the telecommunications industry that we know of today were all built by Flex. All right, so there is a very significant experience that we have had, and this has been probably one of our longest serving markets where we have been engaged with. Next to that is the lifestyle segment. So in this particular segment, we work on producing products which are appliances, home appliances, your coffee machines, washing machines, microwaves, also vacuum cleaners in the floor care segment. Micro-mobility is something that's starting new, whereby you have a lot of personal mobility devices, call them e-bikes or e-scooters. There is a range of different products that we work with. And also audio products. We also work with quite a number of the well-known brands in terms of audio products. And these collectively form what we call the lifestyle or consumer-related products. And then on to the right of that, we have consumer devices. We used to build a lot of the mobile phones that, again, are well-known brands in the market. And we have continued to be engaged with quite a number of these mobile phone devices. The focus more is moving now towards more intelligent devices, as I mentioned earlier in the marketing themes. So we are looking at basically also moving with the markets to see how we basically engage in more intelligent consumer devices and work ourselves upwards in conjunction with the moves in the market, right? To the bottom of that, three segments, and before I move on, the top three segments are what we collectively call the top three markets are collectively what we call the agility segments. These are very agile, mobile market segments. And to the bottom are more stable market segments, what we call the reliability segment collectively. And these comprise of the industrial, automotive, and healthcare market segments, where the products tend to be more longer life cycles. They tend to be more stable and much more difficult to produce and bring to market as they typically touch human bodies, or they are involved in keeping people safe, or have, in the case of industrial products, things that involve are used in power stations or capital equipment. So these are some of the more highly reliable products, products that have a higher level of reliability that we go work on. Now bringing this more home in Malaysia, what we do in Malaysia is this. Malaysia, we have about 15,000 employees, which is slightly less than about 10% of our total workforce. And we are predominantly clustered along the north and the south of Malaysia in Penang and in Johor. It's about roughly evenly split, about 2 million square feet of space each, in total about 4 million square feet with 11 facilities. Out of all those 6 segments that we operate in, we cover five of them that you see here: health solutions, industrial, lifestyle, the consumer devices, and communications and cloud computing. And Malaysia has been a very important part of Flex, and to some degree, I would say also an important part in the history of Flex. Flex, as I mentioned, started 50 years ago, and Malaysia, we came up first in Malaysia in 1988, when this whole industry called the EMS industry was very, very new to this part of the world. So Flex was very instrumental in actually establishing this industry and bringing this industry to Malaysia well before it even went to many other countries. And so we are very pleasantly blessed to have an excellent workforce in Malaysia, excellent support from the government, an excellent infrastructure enabled to being a very key footprint in the global space that we have in Flex. Collectively in Flex, we operate in about 130 different facilities around the world in many different countries, and we have about 160,000 employees all over. And so, as you can see here, Flex in Malaysia is actually a very critical part of this operations. And one of the things that we do here in Flex is also this. Over the years, we have progressively tried to grow the value that we bring to our customers. And also, we also try to inculcate responsibility in the community that we live in. And so we have gone ahead to adopt various programs involving the community. And one of them that we are proud to say is we have actually hired more people with disabilities in Malaysia. And we are progressively looking to ramp that up bit by bit through our facilities in Malaysia. And it has turned to be a very successful story for us. And they are doing very well. Now that you have had a chance of hearing what Flex does, I just want to take us through what we had to go through these last few months in this crisis, so to speak. So I, together with two of my peers, we collectively look after all of Southeast Asia. And I had the privilege to basically lead up the task force in our company for Southeast Asia during this COVID-19 experience. And what I would say is this, in a nutshell, I would say is that we took many people who were ordinary and many of the issues that we have, we worked through them and tried to find avenues and opportunities through which we could create the extraordinary in this crisis. And I'm very proud to say that many people came up, stood up to the obstacles and challenges to find a way how to get about doing it. Now, these are some of the tools that we used, and I will just briefly go through them to give you an idea. In automation and robotics, one of the challenges, first of all, that we had at a very early stage was how to keep our employees safe, right? Given that this was an airborne transmission, right? The virus was easily transmitted airborne. There was a need for us to effectively clean our facilities. So during the early days, we actually went about sanitizing our facilities very, very regularly at the start of shifts and at the end of shifts. And to do this required a lot of labor, a lot of time. So one of the things that we looked at in our facilities was to see how we could bring automation to this. And one of the things that we do in a very rapid time frame was to actually develop a robot that had a UV light on it. And this robot, what it would do is at periods at time when the factories were not in operations and it was completely empty of people, this robot would actually, with the UV light, would travel automatically, autonomously around the facility to actually help to sanitize the environment. And this was something that was formulated. The idea was conceptualized, in a matter of days, and a team of engineers came together from around the world, in different parts of the world, to put together this robot. And they were able to get it up and running in a matter of weeks. All right. So this is an example of how we used automation and robotics to kind of get through this crisis in a way that is not necessarily for manufacturing, but it aided the ability for us to do manufacturing. On the second part, on advanced and remote simulation, one of the big challenges we have today is this: given the fact that people are not able to travel, many a times when we introduce new products to markets, our customers come to our factories, our engineers and our customers' engineers sit down, work together to work through all the different engineering challenges that we have that is normally seen with any new product introduction. And given the travel restrictions, we were not able to do that. So what we had to do is we actually had to use a fair bit of simulation software and tools to be able to virtually present to our customers a layout of what the factory floor would look like, what the manufacturing lines would look like, provide some levels of animation, simulation to actually show how a product would be built up progressively over time and through the different stages of the manufacturing, and have the ability for the engineers at our customer sites who are thousands of miles away to be able to remotely look at every granular aspect of the manufacturing process of the new product and to predict and anticipate what problems are going to come about and be able to remotely essentially qualify and launch a new product. This is something that we have always dreamed of doing. We have aspired to do it, but in reality, COVID-19 actually gave us the perfect opportunity to be able to take all of those technologies and put it into practice and actually make it work. So as you know, business doesn't stop, right? So we need to find a way through the obstacles to continue with business. And in all of our factories now, we are using various forms of these types of simulations, including at a very basic level, doing video conferences to show an entire manufacturing bill to our customers and essentially being side by side, shoulder to shoulder, virtually to get new products out the door and into the market. Right. The third piece of it, digitalization. Now in digitalization, again here, one of the, I think, jokes I've seen is this: COVID-19, more than maybe more CIOs have been able to increase the level of digitalization. And that is very true for almost all organizations. As a good example, the fact that today I'm having this webinar, all right? The ability for the technology to allow us to bridge distances and still connect with each other is amazing. So we have been able to take a lot of what we do today in pencil, in paper, manually through spreadsheets, and look at finding ways how we basically go about digitalizing this and streamlining the workflow such that we remove a lot of the unnecessary pieces, because even up to today, a good portion of our employees are still working from home and supporting their colleagues who are in the factory. So without this digitization tools, we will not be able to do that. The fourth aspect, real-time supply chain. Now, when this crisis unfolded, one of the big impacts that we had was the immediate drop in our logistics connectivities. We had airlines who were having to shut down. Many airlines, as you know, have reduced their capacity by well over 95%. So air freight lines, links that we had, shipping lines that we had situations where, because there weren't enough empty containers, shipping containers around the world in different parts of the world, so there wasn't an opportunity to be able to move goods from one location to another location. So there was a complete, effectively, you could say, a shutdown in the connectivity of the world, both physically and socially. And we had to basically use a lot of our real-time supply chain tools that allow us to see where planes were moving, where ships were moving, where containers were moving, where trucks were moving, where there were bottlenecks, and what were the alternative routes that we could use to move our goods and keep the links going, the wheels running, so to speak. So this real-time supply chain tool that we have developed, which I'll share in a moment, allowed us to basically stay abreast. And on a daily basis, there were basically communications or reports being presented up all the way up to our executive management to allow people to make real-time decisions on how we keep the links going. The last piece of it, additive manufacturing. This is also something that has been on the cusp of taking off in a big way. There has been a lot of promise around 3D printing. And this is, again, one of those things that came to fore in this crisis, right? With this crisis, given the fact that many a times we were not able to go get parts from our traditional suppliers, we basically then had to go around using 3D printers that we have in our vicinity to be able to do printing out of products or tools or jigs and fixtures that we needed to continue with our manufacturing. So I hope I give you a sense of what are some of the things that we had to do, where we took existing technologies that we had and we adapted it to the crisis and to the obstacles that we had to try and find solutions in how we go about continuing with our manufacturing processes and doing it not just to fulfill manufacturing, but to do it in a way where we also move forward and move the bar into more advanced manufacturing. So with that, one of the key themes that has been coming out recently is this keyword that you see all around called resiliency. What does that mean? Resiliency basically refers to the ability to be able to withstand all kinds of obstacles and blocks that come in a particular situation. And with this, there were three key elements that we actually depended on. One, as I mentioned previously, was the visibility. So the real-time supply chain, we have a tool in Flex called FlexPulse that gives us a real-time visibility all the way down to our individual raw materials that we have in any part of the world in all of our factories. This visibility internally within Flex and coupled with knowledge of what's happening external to Flex in terms of the logistics links, in terms of disruptions in supply chains, allowed us to basically gather enough intelligence to be able to make decisions that fed into our execution. All right, so in the execution portion, we would take the knowledge and information from this visibility, put it into our planning processes, and with that, we would then go about running our execution. We then also leveraged a lot of the tools, digitization tools that we had, and the robotics and automation that we have to drive higher levels of execution, because in a crisis, every second that is lost is something that cannot be returned back, and every second is more important than when in a non-crisis scenario, when you have the luxury of time. And last but not least, to bring this all together, it could not be done if not for the people that we had. All right, the experience, the dedication, the commitment, and the trust. All right, basically help to forge relationships and establish a culture where, in a crisis, one of the key things is this: there is typically very little room to sit and think and second guess when directions are given. So when everybody comes together and collaborates and makes decisions, when we make a decision to move forward and execute, there cannot be room for second guessing. And in that, I'm very proud to say, collectively all around the world, many people came together. The note that you see at the top right hand that says 24/7 team, I can attest to the fact that many people were literally working extremely long hours and through the nights, through different time zones, to basically help ensure that our customers were able to fulfill their customers' needs. As you know, some of the products we had to build were healthcare related products, which were life critical. And so our ability to be able to support that was extremely critical. So some of the things that we did specifically in the healthcare era, as I just briefly described, we were involved in building ventilators. So we had to very quickly ramp up in one of our cases, one of our sites. We had to build the equivalent of 1 year's worth of volume. We had to build it in 1 month. At the very early stages of COVID-19, when people were having a lot of respiratory issues, the ventilator programs were needed to be scaled. And so we, on the back of all the restrictions and all the obstacles that we had in COVID-19, whereby people couldn't travel to factories, we needed to establish social distancing, people needed to wear masks, or breathing would be a bit more difficult. The team took on all of these challenges and went about scaling these. Similarly, for diagnostics as well, we have had to do bring out more diagnostic tools, devices that were used during this COVID-19. Nebulizers were another example. Due to COVID-19, many people were having respiratory issues. There was a lot of buildup of mucus in the lungs, right, during this period. And one of the things that was found to be effective in helping were the nebulizer systems. So we had to very significantly ramp up delivery of our nebulizer systems. And last but not least were the analyzers. Some of the test kits, the antibody test kits that you see here. One of our customers actually helped to develop on the spot, very rapidly, COVID-19 related antibody test kits to help with the detection of the virus. And these went into our immunoassay analyzers. So on the background of all of this, I'm just sharing here one example of what we did in just one of the market segments. Together with this, even on the communications fronts, on the networking fronts, the need for communications, even between frontliners, right, critical staff that are deployed out into the fields in remote locations, communication links, healthcare solutions, industrial equipment. All of these basically came together in a period of time where we needed to scale our operations, scale our volumes, while having tremendous obstacles both within Flex in terms of ensuring our people are safe while being productive, and external to Flex, whereby our logistics links were completely down, and we had to find ways to basically re-establish logistics links to move raw materials into our factories and finished products out of our factories to our end customers. So on the back of this, I would say it's people at the end of the day that help create the extraordinary. And what do we see coming out of here was this. I would just share a few key things that we saw as takeaways, all right? Don't make things complicated, right? One of the learnings that we had in this whole crisis is this. To move fast, you need to keep things simple. And it's very counterintuitive when people say less is more. The reality of this in what we do today in Flex is this. Every step of the way, we try to see how we can basically make things simple, easy for people to understand, for a layperson to understand, so that when you eliminate the complexities, that is when you start seeing clarity. Right? So simplicity is a very critical skill that is important in enabling people to do the extraordinary. Articulation. When communications are remote, like in the current situation where people need to be able to communicate across physical different distances while not being able to see each other, the ability to clearly express one's thoughts and ideas becomes all the more relevant, right? So it ties along together with simplicity in the sense that don't try to communicate everything, but try to be clear on what exactly the few key points that it is that you want to communicate, and communicate those well in the best possible manner, right? So a skill of being able to be articulate is something that's critical. Be inquisitive. With every challenge, there is normally a way around it, but the way or the door to finding the solution will only come about by looking at areas not just those that we are commonly familiar with, but looking at areas outside of what we are familiar with as well. So being inquisitive in what we do. Limitless. Typically, we ourselves are our own blocks. We should find ways to basically unblock ourselves when opportunities come our way, when doors open up, and these are areas or things that we have not traditionally done. We should basically find ways to take on those challenges, regardless of what they mean. Whether you succeed or fail is not important, but being able to try it, and when you do fail, what is more important is the ability to be able to correct quickly and adapt quickly and move forward. That is a bigger strength than the failure itself. And a lot of times, I think when we see startups and new enterprises that we work with, the ones that we typically see succeed are not the ones who are strong or large or well-funded, but it's typically those who are quick to adapt when they fail, right? Because failure is a given. And if you don't fail, you don't know what you don't know. And last but not least, one of the things we have also seen quite a bit is the need for honesty and integrity. As I mentioned earlier, when we have to move in a crisis, we have to move quickly. There is no room for second guessing. The ability to have trusted relationships built upon truth is all the more important. Sorry. So I just wanted to share with you some life skills that we saw were what manifested themselves in the people during this crisis, and those were the skills that actually helped us overcome this quickly. And if I were to sum it up, these are some of the values that we have in Flex. And if I were to sum it up, it boils down to these three things, right? We find a way to support each other to do things in a better way, right? We move fast with discipline and purpose. Failure is not a problem by itself, but being able to recognize failures, adapt to it, and then move fast, but with discipline and purpose, that is what makes us stronger. And we find ways to do the things right always, right? It doesn't matter, again, that we make mistakes, but when we find mistakes, we acknowledge it and we find the best way to do it right. And we do this always in a responsible manner. So these are some of the values that we also aspire to that actually helped us in bridging this crisis. Now, in addition to this, some of the things that we went ahead to do, as I mentioned earlier, is that other than working with our customers, working with our employees, a critical part of who we are and what we do is the community partnerships that we have. So during this COVID-19, we worked together with Mercy Malaysia, with the Johor state government and some of our customers to basically help with donations of a combination of consumables, things like PPE, protective equipment, mask, sanitizers, gloves. And also, we actually also helped to provide some equipments that were needed during the early stages for the respiratory ailments, right? Together with that, we have worked progressively over the years, various activities surrounding the environment, the community, and also you'll see here in the top right, road safety, right? These are some of the things where we see that if there are opportunities not to be able to lose lives needlessly, and through a combination of education and initiatives that we can take, we basically find ways to engage with the community to do so. And this crisis actually made it all the more important for us to engage deeper with the community, right? To come together with the community. These are just some of the awards that we have had over the years. We had Best Employer Award for the safety, commuting safety management. AmSham Cares is an organization comprising of many industries, all right, under the AmSham body, which is the American Chamber of Commerce, whereby we work together to basically provide social support for communities. And then last but not least, as we mentioned, people is our cornerstone, and human resources are our key asset. And this is something that we strive to over the years in making sure it is. Over here, I've just put together a few news clips that we do. We have done, as I mentioned earlier, quite a bit in engaging with our communities to find ways to include more people. So one of the key elements that we drive in is diversity and inclusion. And in this regard, we are very proud to say we have actually taken on many people with disabilities, deaf and dumb, hearing disabilities, and be able to take them in and give them an opportunity to build their own confidence, to have a meaningful purpose, to be well engaged, and to be equitably rewarded for their engagement in society. And we are very, very happy that this has been working very well. Together with that, on the bottom right of the screen, you will see here is we have actually embarked over the past few years, progressively, we have embarked on various opportunities, collaborations with academia. In fact, with UTM, we have also embarked. So with various different academias, we have embarked in engaging on the academia and industry collaboration in developing learning modules, diploma courses, whereby we bring the industry knowledge that we have back to the experts in education, who are people like yourself, and getting your expertise to help us develop curriculums, which some of the knowledge that we have and some of the knowledge that you have, and having the academia to actually help deliver some of these courses to our staff. It provides a very unique opportunity to bring together the strengths of both organizations, right, academia and industry. And given the large employee base that we have in Malaysia of 15,000 people, we are basically looking to use this as an avenue to actually scale our programs such that we can bring the knowledge back into academia and potentially back upwards into research at some point in time, to see how we can deepen the collaboration between academia and industry for the very purpose of ensuring that Malaysia continues to remain relevant and a key pillar in the supply chain cog of the world, so to speak. All right. Southeast Asia, with all the geopolitical issues that are going on, there are more opportunities for Southeast Asia and in particular Malaysia to be very well positioned in capturing this. So this is some of the things that we are going on. And that brings me to my last slide. So in summary, what we try to do here is this. In creating the extraordinary, we basically take each of the obstacles that we have. We take the best minds that we have, the ordinary minds that we have, and help provide the tools and the environment to help them create value and achieve the extraordinary. All right. Developing trust in the partners that we work with, be it technology, supply chain, manufacturing solutions, putting it all together and bringing that trust back to our customers is something that we try to do. And doing it on behalf of Malaysia especially is a key responsibility that we know we are embodied with, that we take very seriously. And every day of our lives, we try to do the extraordinary to embody that trust that our customers give us. Similarly, in our community engagements, right? We know we live here in Malaysia. We are firmly rooted within our communities. And what we do here is not to be just a bystander in the community, but to be an active participant in the communities that we live and work with, to see how we can collectively grow together. And last but not least, we strive, as always, to see how we can provide opportunities for our employees to grow to their fullest possible potential. Right. So with that, I come to the end of my presentation and open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jacob, for your insightful and awesome sharing with us today. And thank you for accepting our invitation. And it's our privilege and honor to have you with us today, Mr. Jacob. And despite of your busy schedule, you are giving your precious time with us. And we coming with first questions, because we have a few questions from our audience. This is Dr. Sharifah. Sir Yusuf, sir, you mentioned 3 agile industries flags involved in and agility in facing COVID-19. How you keep the human resource development meets the desired change needed?
Okay, thank you. It's a really great question. As I mentioned, everything that we do is centered all around people, and the human development, human resources development is a key part of it. Over the years, one of the things that we have learned is this. In the past, we have started to do training on ourselves, by ourselves, and there are limits that we get to in being able to do that. We have knowledge. What we have in Flex is being at the forefront of technology and the products that we build for our customers. we have knowledge that maybe takes a bit more longer to come back to academia. So what we do in trying to bridge this gap of developing the human resources at a pace that the market desires is what we are doing now is we are deepening this collaboration with the academia to see how we can basically move forward in uh, developing this. So we bring this knowledge that we have in the back from the industry back into academia, collaborate it together, and make sure that it is relevant and contemporary for what we do.
Thank you. Thank you for your response, Mr. Jacob. And the next questions coming up from Dr. Eileen Su. Going forward following this pandemic, what particular skills would you foresee that a fresh graduate would need to equip with? Many are facing difficulties in getting employment. What would be your advice to them?
Okay, so for fresh graduates, again, this is a great question. It's something that's very difficult today. What we have is basically this. The life skills that I mentioned in the slides are basically key element, key part of this, right? What we have is the need to essentially be flexible. Learning doesn't stop the time that you graduate, but what fresh graduates need to do is continue to keep an open mind. Know that when you have undertaken certain learning experiences and knowledge that you have gathered from the university, that is just the start of the journey, right? Even at where I am today, there are many things that I learn, that I continue to learn. So the few key skills that I mentioned, simplicity, don't overcomplicate things, keep things simple, right? Have an open mind, be limitless. And in all of this, keep yourself truthful and honest in what you do. And this allows you to basically move forward and stay relevant as you progress along.
Okay, thank you. And this is from Dr. Shahida Sulaiman. Thank you, Mr. Jacob Philip, for the insightful talk. Would you share the approaches used to manage the agility phase in the first three industries that Flux serve, that are communications, enterprise, and cloud, lifestyle, consumer devices, as mentioned earlier?
Sure. So in these three segments or industries which are very, very agile, as you correctly pointed out, it is very fast moving. We look at it from two aspects, right? From the demand perspective and from the supply perspective. What do we need to do? So in the demand, in these three industries, we see very significant volatility in terms of the end customer demands, right? So as an example, I will give you one example without, again, mentioning any specific names. Vacuum cleaners. Who would have thought vacuum cleaners would be something that would be very high in demand, all right, during this period? But coincidentally, when people were staying at home and COVID-19 was a big thing on people's mind, somehow personal hygiene became a big thing. And overnight, we had a doubling in terms of the demand of vacuum cleaners. So what we do is basically we basically see what the end markets look like in these three areas. We anticipate what they require. And then what we do is we work backwards with ourselves in positioning the people and the supply chain to be able to support these end markets, right? So it's a combination of looking at both the demand and supply areas and structuring them downstream through the whole value chain to be able to support this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacob, for your response. And we move to the next questions. Okay, hold on. The next questions coming from, yeah, of course I can see that, but then it's not appeared in our screen. Tanika, would you please help me? All right, from Dr. Nasir Hussain, when you collaborate with clients to improve their product for mass production, who owns the IP right for the design tweaks?
Yes, so typically the way we work in a contract manufacturing environment is the IP rights are owned by the customers themselves. So they own all the IP rights. what we do is basically we help them with the industrialization of the product. So the actual product designs and IP rights are owned by the customers, and we basically work through the manufacturing processes to see how we can industrialize the products at scale. And so our IP, so to speak, or our intellectual property that we bring is more in the industrialization of the products, and the tools, the jigs, the fixtures, the automation that is required to enable the customers to scale. As I mentioned, you sometimes go from 1 to 10 in a very short time. So that is what we do.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Nasir, and also thank you, Mr. Jacob, for your response. And we have a few questions actually from our audience. Okay, meanwhile, waiting for that, I would like to, how do you predict, because we have unforeseen situation like pandemic COVID-19, how are you going to predict the manufacturing industry, especially would impact for the economy of Malaysia in the rest for the next year, for example? What do you think, Mr. Jacob?
Okay, what we see is this. I think worldwide, not just for Malaysia, we are having a very difficult period, and it will take some time. Can you just give me a moment? I've got some folks at the door. I think I need to. Yeah, I'm in quarantine, so.
All right, it's okay. All right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm back. I think they wanted to do the next COVID test for me. So, yeah. So I think during this period is going to be a tough period for the whole world, and Malaysia is no less impacted by it. It will probably take through many months, but the one difference that we see potentially is given that everybody is geared up and ramped up for it, the recovery will potentially be pretty fast. The only question is when will it come, right? So we have seen some examples of it in China. When they were able to recover very quickly, they basically recovered up and down, like a V shape almost.
Yeah. Okay, all right. From Jin Jiang Huang. Thanks, Captain Jacob and UTM. Question 1, meaning she has more than a question. What your opinion on collaboration between industry player and higher learning institute going forward? And typically in what subjects or about the fresh graduate internship? Thanks.
Okay, so typically the collaboration that we have is we have collaboration in 3 areas, right? Research, innovation, and enterprise. I think these are the 3 areas that we have collaboration in. So I think institutes that are able to provide the collaboration in those 3 areas are basically what will be useful for this collaboration between industry and academia. And in terms of subjects, it doesn't matter which subject that you do. The main thing is that whatever that you do it with your full interest and do it right. I think that's the main thing.
Okay, I do agree with you. All right, the next question.
Murni, I'm really sorry, but I think I need to get to this test. I think the KKM folks are pounding away.
Okay. You want to proceed for KKM, or you want to just wrap up our session?
Yeah, I think we probably might wrap up if it is possible. I'm very sorry, but I don't control the time, unfortunately.
I would like to invite Associate Professor Dr. Ellen Su together with us today. And to our audience, this is our key person collaborating between UTM and Flex.
Yes, just give me a moment.
Over to you, Dr. Ellen.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for accepting our invitation for this Captain of Industry webinar. Jacob has been very quick to respond when I asked if he would share his experience spearheading Flex through this pandemic experience. It was heartening to know that the medical products and some consumer products are actually experiencing a ramp in demand, and Flex is responding rapidly to these changes. And I thank you, Jacob, and thank Jacob a lot also, because although in quarantine, he made time for this session.
Yeah.
So for those who missed this interesting talk, they can still tune in to Faculty of Engineering UTM Facebook page for the recorded session. So please like, subscribe, and share this information to your friends. Thank you. Thank you once again, Jacob, for being here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye-bye.
Alan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So, to our audience, stay safe, keep your social distancing, and please don't forget our next session with our webinar series for Distinguished Lecture Series and also Leader of Enterprise. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you for audience for keep interesting and put your passion towards our programs. And for that, thank you again to Dr. Alan and Mr. Jacob, and thank you to the audience. With that, bye-bye. See you.